Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Sessions, a podcast about the people who live and work in the esports and gaming industry and how they survive. My name's Matt Demers, and I'm your host. Today we are going to talk to Travis Maut Bueno, who is a Dota 2 caster. He recently kind of made a giant break in getting invited to Manila to do the Manila Major Dota 2 tournament, which was hosted by Valve Software, who, you might know them from having Steam on your computer. So I had a chance to talk to Travis about his path as a caster, how kind of screwy the caster system is for Dota 2, a lot of self-doubt issues, and just like getting past all that, because that's something we honestly need to do if we're going to progress as creators. The cool thing about this episode is that me and Maut were actually across the table from one another at the Beyond the Summit International Qualifier Hub, which is actually a mouthful, but basically we'll explain what the event was and what both of us were doing there. So sit back, relax, and listen. Sessions is about the humans, not the handles. Hey Maut, how's it going?
It's going pretty well, Matt. Thank you for interviewing me here at the BTS Hub.
Yeah, this is actually kind of a little bit weird, mostly just because I haven't done a live interview before. I'm not used to sitting like right across the table from someone.
Yeah, it's a more what's the word I'm looking for? Intimate feel, I suppose, than online. You're sitting right across the table from somebody in a nice room and you're relaxing and chilling.
I think that's kind of like what you're doing today anyway, mostly just because like the series that you were done are done.
Yeah,
just like
I'm done for the day, so I don't have much to do. I feel like I should have a beer in my hands, but at the same time, I feel like it's too early for that. So
I think like some of the benefit, at least from being like a talent at this kind of event, I guess for people listening who aren't into Dota, essentially Beyond the Summit is a company who does a lot of broadcasting for independent Dota tournaments or just like whatever they're needed for. They brought together, I believe, around 20 or 30 different talent from around the globe who are doing like their own Dota stuff for different companies, and they are housing them, putting them up in a hotel. And then we're at their offices right now where we are basically covering a 4-day, 24-hour-a-day event. I'm here doing social media. Maut's here doing panel stuff, broadcasting, that kind of stuff. And it's just generally a little bit of a marathon, but it's pretty fun.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, I think you guys have it tougher, the production people, especially the people behind the scenes, because I think your schedules are longer, your hours are longer for us, except for me especially. This time around, I got to do the playoffs for the American region, which means that I don't do as much of the group stage stuff, which I'm kind of sort of okay with, but also not at the same time. I'm glad I get to do the playoffs, but I'm seeing other people like Annie and all these other people, Zyori and Lyrical. They get to do all these group stage games, and if the group stage games were like the NA group stage games, then I would be like, okay, fine, then whatever. But for them, they're getting to do these EU and China group stage games that are like amazing 70-minute games between some of the top teams in the world. And so it's just kind of, it's cool that I get to do the playoffs. I'm very excited because it means that Valve is saying, okay, we trust you to do the playoffs. You went to Manila, and we trust you to do this part of the tournament, but they don't trust you to do more than the playoffs. So they want to give more chances to other people because they want to look at them and say, okay, well, how ready are they for TI? And that's fine. It's just it feels like I don't get to show my stuff as much as I want to, which is unfortunate.
I mean, I'd imagine that's a little bit of a mode change for you, mostly just like referencing the Manila Major, which happened, I believe, last month at the beginning of the month, where that was your first, I don't want to say first because you did get invited to, I believe, TI4?
It was my first LAN event, we'll call it that. Oh, okay. I did get invited to TI4, but those group stages, and you can't really consider that a LAN event. You're not really doing work on stage.
So how big was that for you?
For TI4 or Manila?
No, Manila.
I mean, Manila was the biggest thing, and I've said this to multiple people, is the biggest thing that's ever happened to me. It was probably the best trip that I've ever had. It was the most exciting trip I've ever had. It was kind of stressful, in the beginning, and then as the days went on, it got more and more enjoyable and more easy, and I did pretty well. I had a lot of good and positive feedback, but it's stressful because you're essentially fighting for your career, right? Because
you're trying to keep the momentum going.
Right, exactly. And that's why I wanted to do more group stage games, because without that, you don't have the same access to, there's a lot of people watching, and Valve has made it pretty clear that they base their they make their own decisions, but they base a lot of it, I think, on the community and how the community feels about me. It's great that I got a lot of good feedback in a Reddit thread at Manila, but there's a month between that and now, and then there's another month between then and TI. And so for TI, as someone that didn't get invited last year, and I was pretty sure I was going to get invited last year, which was a dumb thing for me to believe in. It's kind of just like, it's super stressful for me to be like, okay, well, I kind of just have to do the best that I possibly can do. Otherwise, I might not get invited again, or I might do less, if I do get invited. So, I'm kind of just rambling right now, but it's great that I got invited to Manila, but it's definitely stressful as well. Post Manila is even more stressful than at Manila.
I'd imagine, because from what you're saying, it's almost like you need to provide enough proof for Valve to keep their memory fresh in terms of their perception of you.
Right.
And it's almost like you wish you could ask Valve and be like, okay, I did fine at Manila. I was very well received, but it's like, am I good?
I did. I actually messaged someone from Valve, Bruno, and I talked to him about my casts, and he's just like, it's important that you think about what the community wants and not what it's important that you think about how the community views you instead of how Valve views you. And I'm thinking at the time, well, you guys are the one that make the final decision, right? And the community might view me okay or well, or pretty well, but if I don't get the right Reddit thread at the right time, then I'm in trouble.
You're not exactly in charge of your own destiny.
No, I'm not in control of essentially, and I'm not in control of casting at a TI, which essentially means I'm not in control of my career and of my life, because you get to do only so many tournaments during the year, and then you go to TI, and obviously TI is the biggest one, and TI obviously it's the one that
makes you.
It makes you, and it also it provides you money. It provides you the most money, from what I've heard. It provides you plenty of exposure. And Manila was great, but it's not like I'm getting job offers up the wazoo, or I'm getting other LAN offers out of nowhere.
It's momentum based.
It is very momentum based, and it's so frustrating having to deal with the community sometimes. It's just.
There's so many different voices coming in. It's like you probably don't really have a good parser of like what's worth pursuing.
Right. Somebody will tell me one day that I have a fantastic cast and everything's going well, and another day somebody will say that I did terrible, and there's like so many different viewpoints going all over the place, and everyone tells me to just trust the peers that I'm working with, just trust the people that I'm casting with, but they're not concerned about me, they're concerned about themselves as well. Just like I'm not watching all of their casts, I'm watching my own casts, and the only people that can really judge how well I do are the people that I cast with, the people that are my co-casters. And that was one of the things, is that, the Gods, I think, was the one that pushed for me to do the playoffs in the American region, which is great. I'm super happy that he did, and that makes me happy. That makes me feel like, okay, he thinks I'm a good caster, otherwise he wouldn't have done that in the first place. But to make a long story short, essentially, it's a very stressful job to be in, and there are some days that I think it's almost too much, kind of,
It's a grind, and when you have to do that grind over a longer period of time, it's obviously wears down on you a little bit more.
Well, because that I've been doing this for a long time. I've been doing this for 4 years now, or I think this is my 4th year that I'm on, and I did finally get the Manila Major, and I've finally made my casting to where I think it's a good spot. It's not good enough yet, but the problem is just that, I have really not that much to show for those 4 years, other than a large Twitter following and the main stage at Manila, and a couple of other good casts here and there, and a good fan base, but that's about it. There was a point in time where before Manila I was thinking like, okay, well, this might be the end, this might be it, because I don't know what I need to do to get into a better position. And it's such a tough and competitive, and especially with people being added to the scene regularly, it's such a competitive industry. Not that I'm concerned that I'm going to be passed over or anything. I think OD Pixel is one of the one of the people that did do that, and for good reason. He's a better caster than most, if maybe not the best caster, but I do think that's a once in a blue moon type of thing. I don't think there are any other people out there that are, there's right now there's I think a list of casters, and there's a certain ranking in my mind. And those are somewhat interchangeable, but I feel like I'm in a good position in that regard.
I mean, there's like a hierarchy, or well, there's an imagined hierarchy.
Sure.
And if you feel that, well, not necessarily that he, it's like he puts you on notice, It's like if someone were to hypothetically like leapfrog that hierarchy, it's like it makes you reflect even more on yourself and be like, okay, like am I the one being leapfrogged, or is it that like what do I do to compete, or what could it happen more often, or it's a very mental game.
And it just comes down to momentum too, which we've used this word already a lot, but they get one good game and they get one good cast, and suddenly they're in a really good position, whereas you don't have that opportunity perhaps, or I don't know, you've had a bad week, and so the stress is definitely on me further, and it's so hard because it's just like, there are so many different factors that go into what people think of and perceive of as a good caster, like, and I don't have a lot of those qualities, so in order for me to actually become a good caster, I have to work that much harder, and I have to have. I was even just like, I was talking to people out there a second ago after I was done casting, and I was just like, I just wanted a good cast, and it wasn't, I wanted a good series, and it wasn't a good series. And so for every series that's not a good series, it's just like, it feels like a waste of time almost. And not that I don't love watching those Dota, and not to say that, like, oh man, it was a waste of, my time. I can't believe I watched that Dota game, because I love watching every Dota game. I love casting whenever I can, and I'm glad that I get to do it. But it just feels like in this situation, when TI is right around the corner, every series that's not a good series of Dota 2 is a waste, and that's why those games during the group stages I thought were so important, and I was a little upset that I wasn't able to get in. I did a couple of them, but it was the American region, so a lot of those games I got one good group stage game, which was FTL versus Complexity, and that was it, and that was all that I had for this tournament so far, and that's just the way it is. Sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you get unlucky. It's not like the way that the schedule was set up was completely fair, I think, for the most part. But that's just how it goes. There's a lot of people here, and that's just how it is.
If I can make just like a weird metaphor for a second, it's like I tried to like think of all like what would be kind of similar in your head, but it's like a surf competition where you are a surfer and you're trying to look better and get judged better than all of your other peers. But if good waves don't come up and they come up for them, it's like that's part of it. It's like, right, you can only do so much with your own ability, but you need the environment in order to be able to prove your abilities in, right? And if that, like, it's very easy to turn this kind of conversation into one where it's like, oh, the organizers aren't giving me what I need kind of thing. But at the same time, that's not how the game works.
That's not it, though. It's not. I'm not complaining. It might sound like I'm complaining, but I'm not complaining at those people. I'm not complaining at the organizers. I'm not complaining at the people running this event. No, certainly not. I'm frustrated at the system, kind of.
Is it, if I can armchair therapist for a second, or armchair psychologist for a second, is it just because like for me, like I've kind of gone through similar things where you have at least a definite path in front of you that you know that you need to take. And that while that path might be frustrating, you are at least familiar that that's the path that you need to take. Mm-hmm. So you've made this giant jump. You've made this thing where like, you've gotten some good feedback, you've done this large event, but all of a sudden now there's this even larger wild expanse in front of you where you don't exactly know how to get through it. Is that part of it where you're just thinking like, okay, well, I had a plan before, and now that I've kind of like taken a step up that ladder, now I don't know how to approach it as much?
Kind of. When you do that one big event, you assume that you get more and more events after that.
You figure like you'll like make it, like you'll like explode.
But the problem with Manila was that it was so close to TI, or at least so close to the TI qualifiers. There's only 1 month in between now and TI. Is that that it's there's not much. There's a couple of lands, but I'm not going to any of those, because maybe if I had done well at if Manila was a bit earlier and I had done well at Manila and those tournaments weren't announced yet, maybe I would have been brought to those.
Yeah, they could have been. You would have been on the table for those, and then you would have been. It's like you kind of have that breakout LAN, and then ideally you would love to have like 2 or 3 in between to kind of refine what you use to break out at Manila, right? You'd love to have like a couple smaller ones where it's just like, okay, I can refine what did well with Manila, continue to like eliminate what didn't work, and then ideally you'll be on the table for TI in a much more clear, you'd have a much more clear portfolio of work there,
Sure.
But since, like you said, Manila ends, then you've got a month until TI qualifiers and then another month until TI. It's like all of a sudden you're just like, okay, well, I hope I did well enough at Manila that it put me on the table, instead of just like, and that being your only kind of offering up to them, I guess.
Right. I mean, it's just, the problem for me is that I think a lot of people here have backup plans, or they've already made it and they're already successful. That doesn't really exist for me. People have degrees, people have, other jobs they can go back to. I don't have that luxury. And that's the one scary part about it, is that I need to make this work in one way, shape, or form. And I shouldn't be complaining so much, and I shouldn't be worried so much considering how I did at Manila. But it's just...
It doesn't leave your brain, though. Like, I've been in the exact same place, and it does not leave your brain. Just because you've had that one success, it's very easy to not revel in that success, because then all of a sudden you've got all these other things that are just, like, weighing in the back of your head.
Yeah, I mean, I came home, and I was like, I was...
All right, how do I make this keep going,
Yeah, I mean, I came home, and the first thing I did when I came home was cast, and I was like, I'm glad that I'm casting. I did a couple of tournaments and a couple of big games for those tournaments, and that's great, but it's just, oh God, it's...
Man,
just...
dude, I don't worry. I am like 100% sympathetic to where you are, because like I went through the exact same thing, where it was like I had a post or something blow up, 120,000 followers or 120,000 hits, like, 500 new followers on Twitter, like front page Reddit thread, whatever. And then I put out not exactly the next like step in that series, or just like the next piece of content, and seeing it just like kind of go back to like where it was normally. It's just like, did I just get lucky, or did I, what did that even make a difference? Like, is it something that, like I said, it doesn't leave your brain. It just like is consistently there. And I think a lot of people in esports kind of go through that.
I know I have a lot of fans, but the problem is that, is it going to be another situation like Dakota last year for TI5, where he didn't get invited, and then his fans stood up for him? Do I have enough fans for that to actually happen? And do my fans care enough for my casting for me to do that? But it's not something that I want to dwell on too much anymore, because it's just like, I know that this is a thing that's happening, and I know that there's nothing I can do to really change it other than having a really good cast. So I kind of have to just put it out of my mind, and really I just wanted to make people aware of how stressful this job is, because people thought, you think about casting a lot, it number one requires a lot of effort, or number one requires a lot of energy. You think that you can get up, and a lot of people are armchair criticizing people about casting is just, it's easy. You just talk about Dota the entire time. It's really
just watching video games for a living.
It's one of the most difficult jobs that you could possibly do, because you have to know what you're talking about. You have to be thorough, concise, and you have to have a good voice. You have to, be exciting, and you have to be.
You have to count on other people's tastes when you yourself are only just one person.
I mean, it's so subjective too. That's the thing. So, as much as I love doing what I do, and which is a ton, it's just that, there's a lot to think about. There's a lot to be stressed about, and I didn't want to make this whole thing about like, oh man, I'm so screwed, because again, with even without all of that in my mind, with all of the community feedback and all that stuff in my mind, I'm still feeling very good about where I am right now today, because luckily I don't just have casting under my belt. Luckily I have observing as well, which is also a useful skill to work with. And if I don't get TI, then hopefully I get the next major, and we go from there. And hopefully I get more LAN events now too. But that just comes down to organizers and my friends kind of saying, hey, do you want to come here? And that's something that I might have to ask help with. But for now, I'm gonna when I'm done with this, I'm pretty much, I have some casts that I have to do when I get home, but I'm pretty much on vacation after this because I need some time to chill out and relax before. And I am going to go to TI, so if people are maybe concerned that I might not make it through the regular channels, I've already bought a plane ticket, and I've kind of have a place to stay, so I will be there, so I can see you guys, I can hang out with people and everybody like that. But
like you can participate. I think that's for a lot of people, that's the fear, is that if you don't go to this kind of event, you're not participating, and then you kind of run a risk.
You miss out on a lot. I mean,
Yeah.
as somebody that went to TI last year as just a visitor, not even someone that was working, it was a fun experience. Don't get me wrong, but it was an experience that I felt like I was missing out on a lot of more enjoyable things in terms of just work and things of that nature. So
what I kind of liken it to, and like one of the things I think is really difficult about trying to like break into esports as like a career, or it's the social aspect of it, right? It's like what you're saying is like what you mentioned earlier a little bit was, you are depending on other people vouching for you. You are depending on other people like who know you as a person to kind of speak up for you and advocate for you. And if you aren't going to be at the events, or if you don't have the money to be able to fund your own way to the events, it can be very difficult to kind of make those relationships, because, even just from being at TI last year, in terms of getting people together to play Mafia, or getting people together to like eat or just chill or whatever, it's very, I wouldn't say insular in a bad way. It's more of just like there's a degree of trust involved. Like people want to be able to say, okay, this guy is real, and he's not going to, he's not going to just like videotape us doing like shit in private, and then we have to worry about like the repercussions of that or something like that. It's people getting that kind of, I don't want to say value added, the kind of vote of confidence that like that person is at least worth your time, or worth worth fighting for, or worth advocating for.
Right.
That can be really difficult.
So yeah, I mean, not to just switch topics completely, but TI is TI, and then whatever happens with that will happen. I'm here now, and I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be with my friends. I'm happy that I went to Manila. That was a lot of fun. And I could talk about Manila for a long time probably too, if you have any questions.
Hey man,
regarding
that is the thing, is like I was really curious about like whether you did anything specific for like to prepare for Manila. It's like obviously you are running the gamut of getting like so much feedback, but it's like, did you just like sit down like beforehand, or like knowing you were going to go to Manila, like getting the invite between then and actually like touching down and like starting your first cast? Or did you just like say, okay, I'm going to work on pronunciation, or I'm going to work on something or other, or I'm going to work on...
I probably should have done all of those things, but no, not really. I mean, the way I prepare is usually I just try to keep myself as relaxed as possible. And the days before I go to an event, just try to cast as much as possible, so that when I get into a cast, I don't feel rusty. You would be surprised how rusty you feel just a week of not casting. And if you do any more than a week of not casting, you're really, really... you're in a bad spot, I think. And so it takes, and that's kind of, and I'm a bit disappointed that I didn't practice more before Manila, because when I got to Manila, and it's funny that this happened during the group stages, not only was I nervous, but I also was a bit rusty. And so my group stage casts were, I don't want to say the worst, but they were not up to the par that I think
they weren't up to your standards.
No,
like
exactly.
we're always going to be our own hardest critic.
And I think when Valve saw my casts during the group stages, they were like, okay, well, we'll give him a couple of shots on the stage and we'll see how well he does. And then it's funny because as soon as I got on stage, I wasn't really nervous. Like I was more nervous during the group stages than I was during the actual main event, when there were people there, when I had my voice going through the crowd, which is, by the way, an experience that I love, and I love every part of it.
It's just like the thing that I noticed is that in contrast to the Shanghai major, where the main language going through the speakers is Chinese. At least in Manila is bilingual with Tagalog and English, and it's like
right.
I wouldn't say surprising, but it was just like a major difference from Shanghai, where all of a sudden the people that are talking, it's not like the English speaking panel or the casters were like the secondary ones this time, and it's like the primary commentators that are being interacted with, or when people laugh at jokes or stuff like that. That was the English cast for Manila, and it was just like, oh, okay, it was bringing it back.
Yeah, I mean, it was cool that they were such a responsive crowd, that they had such a. I think for a lot of the members of the crowd there, they knew all the English coverage, they knew all the English casters, they knew all the English panelists and stuff like that. They didn't really know me the first couple of days I was there. You know, it was funny the first 2 days when I did Complexity versus Wings, and then when I did LGD versus Fnatic, nobody was asking me for autographs. No one really knew who I was. And the day after I did LGD versus Fnatic, which was the biggest series that I had done at that tournament,
that was a crazy series.
It was nuts. I was so that's the epitome of getting a good series to cast. Like games 1 and 2 were great, and then game 3 turns out to be everything you hope for and more. And so you have a good cast there, and then all of a sudden the next day you have one more cast to go, and you go up to the casting booth, and then you see people coming up and saying, Maut, can I have your autograph? Can I have your picture? And so that's a way of showing that you have grown and you have gotten some sort of recognition, and people enjoyed what you did, and that's great. And
well, we hear a lot of the jokes, I guess, at the major Shanghai or like the majors or TI and stuff, where there's like a row of people are like signing autographs or whatever, and I think it's like Purge or Blitz or something. And just I always hear jokes from them where it's like people will get the signatures or the photos with the people they want, and then they feel bad that they don't ask for like the other people on the table, so it's just like a very awkward. Like, oh, okay, I can like. You know, you can sign if you want to.
I mean, listen, if anyone out there is like bypassing other people at the tables, just don't do it. Like, I don't care if you don't like the person.
It's just polite.
Or if you don't know who the person is, they're at the table for a reason. Okay, like, don't just bypass them. You know, just ask them for their autograph. Maybe shake their hand. Don't do anything insensitive like passing them up, because let me tell you, the worst possible thing that you can do to a caster is just, number one, being shitty over the internet, and number two is just especially in real life, it might even be worse, honestly. You're kind of, not that you probably aren't even being intentionally shitty to the person if you don't want their autograph. It's just like, there are for some casters it's probably not a big deal, but for me especially, like, you know, I'm a little bit less thick-skinned than I think a lot of people are, and this industry does take thick-skinned people, and I've built that thick skin over time. But and at the beginning, especially when I was first getting, hate, not necessarily hate threads, but when people were in Twitch were being just vile, that's something that really does sting for a long period of time when you're newer to casting, and as you move along, it gets a bit easier. And if you're better, of course, then it's just fine because people like you. But it's kind of even worse in real life, if and this will almost certainly never happen if you say something shitty about a caster close to them or even to their face in real life. That's probably one of the worst things you can do. But obviously, if you're bypassing them, if you literally, let's say there's like Slacks, me, Zyori, and then Draskell, and then you go to Slacks, you get the signature, you bypass me, you go to Zyori, then you go to Draskell. That's like, what? How do you just do that to somebody? Like, I don't...
Yeah, that's just like putting it right.
I understand. You don't like my casting. That's fine. I totally get it. I totally do. But it still is, like, it's a polite thing to do. It doesn't take any real extra effort. And it's just like...
ink in the pen, man. All it is
it's
ink
literally,
in the marker.
It takes 5 seconds. And most people will go out of their way to do it. And most people want people's autograph, even though they don't know who they are. They're just like, this guy's a famous person. Yeah. Well, let me get an autograph from him. It's just... and people will probably make fun of me for being so weak-willed. I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? I said thick-skinned earlier. I'm trying to think of the antithesis or opposite of that.
It is sensitive.
Sensitive, right. So sensitive about these types of things, but I just can't help it.
I mean, like your entire industry or your entire job and job success is based off of the validation of other people. And it's very much like you can only say to people or like to a person like so many times that just ignore it and just like keep doing your thing, because it's like once it gets into the realm of like needing that kind of public approval in order to make progress, it's like, well, no, I can't. It's like I can't just ignore it, or I can't just not care about it, because if I do, nothing gets fixed and nothing gets better.
I mean, and I wish I had the ability to not care about what people were saying about me. I wish I had that ability, and some people in the industry do. Or some people in the industry claim they don't care, or they claim they hate certain websites and they won't read them, and then the next day they open that page up and they go straight to the front page and see what people are saying about them. That does happen, and I know of plenty of people that do that. And I think always to a certain extent, a little, all of us do that to a certain extent, and really the only people that don't care about what others think about them are people that are secure in the fact that they're in a very good position. Because if you're not in a secure position, you're always looking for that validation. I think if you're not, like you mentioned, you're not focusing on the criticisms or feedback enough. And even if those criticisms and feedback are harsh, they might be valid, and that goes a long way, and you kind of have to read those threads. Maybe not if you see just at some point if you see like 5 or 6 threads in a row with comments up the wazoo with maybe a lot of mean things. That's fine. Just get off Reddit for a while. I understand completely, but there are valid criticisms out there that you need to take care of and you need to heed if you are doing what we are doing and if you are in the same spot that I'm in.
It's just mostly I think it's the volume, and it's usually the tone. Because if someone's going to say, okay, like you don't enunciate, whatever properly, you can usually handle that. But
right.
It's like it depends on the way that they're framing it and the way that they're saying it. And it's just like if you're hearing the same criticism, but in just like varying different tones, it can be very difficult to it's like a filtering thing. It's you have to filter out negativity, but it's like you have to be able to look at that. You have to look at that criticism, even if it's negative, and try to pull out the nugget of like what's actually valid out of it.
And there have been so many valid criticisms that actually have made me a better caster. And one of the things that a lot of people have said recently over a lot of different threads and over the course of the Manila Major was, I really enjoy Maut's casting now that I can actually listen to him. Because beforehand, people were saying that I did this Batman growl when I would cast, where
I read that for the first time.
I was like, and I was like something like he's going for the black hole or something like that. Not as deep as that. I can't even remember how to do it because I haven't done it in a while.
It's in reflex, yeah.
But it would be a way for me to bring what I thought would bring out excitement into the cast. But in all actuality, it was grating for people to listen to. And they just wanted to hear my real voice, and they just wanted to hear what I talked about. And so that was one thing that I learned about kind of like a year ago, and I just said, okay, well, I better fix that. But then there's a difference between that type of criticism where it's valid, and then another person just saying, Maut sounds like something like an autist or something like that. And there's like, I don't know what you want me to change to not sound like that. That's just how I sound. There's nothing I can, it's literally the voice I was born with. The only thing that I could possibly do is maybe have surgery on my vocal cords.
Coaching or whatever.
Or coaching, maybe I could work with somebody and maybe I can change that, but that's personal preference. There's a difference between a wide group of people thinking that I'm doing something wrong, which of course was that whole gravelly voice thing, the Batman voice, and then there's a difference between subjective opinion. There's a difference between subjective opinion on the way that I sound or how I cast. And it's just kind of frustrating.
Yeah, we're just going to fix your mic here for a second. Okay. Basically, sorry, I'm going to actually, shoot, I don't know how to do this without putting on my mic. Do you just want to put it on, pinch the shirt together and clip it there instead of the collar?
That's probably fine.
Yeah, because, I've gone through the similar thing where people don't like how I write or people don't like what I use in my writing. And it's like, is it really worth it to change the thing that you put your personality into and the thing that you put effort into just to appease one person who's like anonymous and likely won't care enough that you tried?
It's not worth it. No, it's not worth it.
No, exactly. That's what I'm saying is like there's different types of criticism. Like you're saying, if you hear like a unified voice saying, hey, the Batman voice sucks, we don't really like it.
Which is what happened, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's at least coming at a volume or at least coming in like a volume of criticism that you can be like, okay, well, let's just try it and let's try not doing it and see what happens. But then you get that one person who's just like, hey, for example, for my writing, it's like, oh, I think he writes too long or something like that. But you're like, there are different things in your mind that you equate with being valid enough to change. It's like the Batman voice. I doubt you were so attached to that like 100% of it, that you were like, oh, okay, like, no, I'm not going to change it. That's literally part of who I am, blah, 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 blah.
No.
But it's just like with other things, like if you believe in it very strongly in terms of like what you bring to the table, it can be, you have enough confidence in yourself to at least be like, enough people like it, or it makes me the unique person that I am, that I'm just going to keep it. Because if one random person doesn't like it, that's like, you can't be everything to everyone.
Yeah.
So it's such a weird industry like that. It's such a weird industry like that we depend so much on feedback from other people.
And I'm glad that I'm getting positive feedback from Reddit, especially. I haven't seen many negative comments there over the past couple of months.
You blew up. I want to say.
Yeah, I did. But there's still that thought. Twitch chat. There's a lot of Twitch chatters that might not like me. There's and there are people on Twitch chat. There are casters that Twitch chat universally or almost universally has no qualms about. There might be one or two voices out there that disagree, but for the most part, there are people out there that are just considered very good casters by pretty much everybody, and that's where I kind of want to get to. And I know there was work that needed to be done. There are things that the criticisms that I was getting at Manila Major where I was saying, "Are you kidding me?" and "Are you joking me?" a lot was the two main things. I've since stopped doing that. I said it once here at this hub at the TI6 qualifier hub, and then there was.
I like that you've thought about it so much that you know how many times you said something.
I mean, you kind of have to, because like if you say it, like if you mentally think I'm not gonna say this, and then you say it during one of your casts, then automatically you're like, oh, there it is again, and then you're like, okay, well, it happened once, it's fine, it's not a big deal, That's one thing. Another thing is that during the Manila Major, a lot of people talked about, especially in the first 2 days, and this is what I was talking about with my group stage cast, is they heard the lack of confidence in my voice, and was some nervousness there, and my intros were bad, and a lot of that had to do with those nerves that I was dealing with, and I'm like, okay, well then I just, the confidence has to be there, and that's not usually something that you can just change, but when I'm in an environment like this,
it's put up or shut up, man. Like you kind of got to do it.
The biggest thing for me at the Manila Major was I wasn't comfortable casting with the people that I was casting with. Not to say that they are bad casters; they're all great casters.
I mean, the synergy matters.
Casters.
The synergy matters.
Of course, the synergy matters, and the casters that I wanted to cast with, the casters that I had synergy with, they were on the panel, and it's so difficult to just sit down with somebody you've never casted with before, and just to because you have no idea how it's going to work out.
Like what their habits are. Like what I'm noticing right this is another layer of that thing that we were talking about. It's all these intangibles that you don't think, or like the audience doesn't necessarily think about. Hi, just doing a quick interview. We're going to be like another 30 minutes. Okay, that's Conrad. Anyways, it's another intangible that you're thinking about. It's like most people don't actually think that, oh, okay, like the A plus B plus C kind of thing, where it's like, okay, I need to have good matches in order to be able to show off my talents. I need to have the momentum in order for people to like see me in a visible environment long term. But now you're talking about like, not to sound blunt or anything, but the community probably doesn't give a crap if you have synergy with a specific caster. Like they aren't going to think of that as an excuse, or they aren't going to be able to think of that as saying like, oh, like this cast is kind of bad. Maybe the casters are, don't fit well together, or maybe they've never worked before, because they can't mentally keep track of like how many times.
They'll blame whoever they think is at fault during the cast,
and if
usually
they don't
that's
have
the play-by-play caster or the person that's leading the cast, which is usually me in those situations. Because when I'm casting with Gods or LD, sometimes we'll share the role, but for most of the time, I'm the one doing all of the play-by-play, and I'm leading. And so that's the person that gets the most flack for a lot of stuff. Because the analysts, they have some leeway, I think, for the most part. Even if they aren't, the tier 1 analysts and the people that are pro players, they still have leeway because they're analysts and they're good casters.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like you were saying, synergy also matters so much in the sense that like you get better casts out of people who have better synergy. It's like if I had to you look at Shanghai Grand Finals, Blitz and Cap, like they have a very good synergy. They have an amazing synergy and are able to fit together. Like even Gods and LD, like having those combinations are awesome, and you were saying that Twitch chat kind of like universally likes those combinations because they have that synergy, but it's an intangible. It's something that's built over time and built over, like, it can even be luck of the draw in the sense that, you know, you might be casting with someone that you're not comfortable with. And especially I'm really hesitant to call it mid-tier, but it's like it's very difficult to define these very intangible upper levels of like the people who are very secure and the people who are still trying to achieve that security. But it's like, if you are at that level and you have not established like the partnership, you haven't formalized the partnership. Like if you think about Cap and Blitz, that partnership is formalized because they have been casted for so long, and they've casted together and they've established that they have a good repartee with each other. But if you're still looking for that other half in order to be like, oh, it's a Blitz and Cap cast, or it's a David and David cast, or it's a Toby and Cinder, and if you're looking for that other half still, it's like you don't have the luxury of a organizer being like, oh, okay, he's good with X or he's good with Y, and, you know, let's just stick them together and we'll know it'd be a good cast. You're still trying to work up to that, and that's obviously, you know, something you got to think about.
Well, I mean, with me and Purge is the one I think I feel most comfortable with, as I just got done casting with him. I mean, we work well together, but it's like, you know, is there any incentive to bring me and him out to an event? You know, they'll probably bring him out to an event, but is there any incentive to bring me out to an event when you have, you know, Captain Purge, when you have LD and Gods, when you have OD and Draskell? Like, what's the incentive to bring me out? And then there's further incentive now because there's other people that are starting to get recognized that I feel like there's just, sometimes it's like I feel like there's a train bearing down on me, and I can't do anything to stop it because the momentum is in their favor and it's not in mine. And I'm glad, listen, everybody's my friend, and I'm glad they're getting that success. I really am. I'm not jealous of it. I'm not envious of it.
Like, to be honest, I've done the exact same thing. Like, I have a huge problem right now where I catch myself looking at other people's success, and it affects me. Like, it's like as I'm a different person where I get very snippy, I get very envious, I get very bitter, and it's just like, it's such a hard thing because you know that you're not that person, but it's just like you're both frustrated at your station in life or like where you are.
Well, I mean, the reason that I do it is not because I'm envious of the person or because, you know, I'm like, oh, they're a better cast than me, because I don't usually think that 99% of the situations. In fact, I feel very confident in the way that I cast. And they have a different way of casting. It's all subjective, but the way that I cast, I feel very good about. The only reason that I feel that way about those people is because of the
1% of the time. You just said it was 99%. It's that 1% that kind of just like, it feels so much louder than the others.
Well, it's not even that. It's just like like I said before, in my job, I have to get these jobs, or I have to get these tournaments secured, or then what am I doing with my life? And I'm missing out on all of these situations. And then there's that other X factor where maybe that person has an accent, or whether that person is maybe not. Maybe that person is a different gender or something like that, and that's something that's unavoidable for me. Or that person's more attractive than I am. That person works out more than I do. There's just like, that's another thing. It's just like those superficial qualities when it comes to maybe an accent isn't superficial, or maybe that's not superficial quality to casting, but it feels like those other superficial qualities are just like, there's
it's
nothing,
a unique marker.
There's like everyone's like, oh my god, this person is it's a great accent and it's awesome, or you know, this is the first person to be like this and to do a cast like this, and it's just like, you know, I'm considered bland, and so it's like, how do I figure out a way to make myself not bland, you know? And I try to do so many different things, and instead of just focusing on having a good cast,
fundamentals,
because
like, it feels like you need to have more.
It does, because like, even with strong casts, even with strong fundamentals, the only like, it's those X factors, it's those things that you have that I don't have, that make you a little bit more well perceived by the community. And it's just like, it doesn't feel unfair, but it feels like I'm missing out. It feels like I'm just like, well, I don't have those, so what do I do?
From my perspective, it's just like, those fundamentals are very hard for people to parse. You know, it's the same thing with Dota, or it's the same thing with basketball, or same thing with any other game. It's like, unless you have a talented analyst that is able to look at, say, farming patterns, or say like the draft in general, or say like zone defense in basketball or something like that, there is a good chance that the layman watching it, the fan, or even someone at Valve that is making these decisions because they're just filling out talent for their event. They are not vocal coaches, or they are not experts at broadcasting or something. They are just making a subjective choice on their part. Mm-hmm. It's like you can take those fundamentals and people will be like, oh, okay, that was a good cast, but they won't be able to tell you why. They will not be able to say like, okay, you had your voice at a certain pitch at this time, or you can detect moments before they were coming, because all that stuff is intangibles. It's like all I know how to relate this kind of stuff back into writing, and it's just like if I write something that is very friendly in terms of length, and this is the one intangible I always tell writers is keep track of your structure. Like if your paragraphs are like a six line paragraph and then another 7-line paragraph, it looks like a wall and no one wants to read it. But the thing is that even if someone reads through an article that's like perfectly spaced in terms of the visual balancing of the paragraphs, no one's going to come out no layman or no like casual reader is going to come out at the end of that and said, yeah, that's a really paragraph structure. Like that's a really well structured paragraph structure kind of thing. But those are fundamentals that if they're not there, people will notice. Yeah. Totally, 100%. Yeah. But when they are there, they kind of fade invisibly into the background because they're assumed that that's supposed to be there. So when you're looking at something like an accent or something else, it's very easy to pick that out because that is one more thing on top of it. And I get what you're saying with the blandness. The blandness is like it's very easy to take this kind of conversation and think that those unique factors, especially with more women entering into casting, more hosting, that kind of stuff, it is very easy to tell or to decipher that kind of worrying or that kind of like mental argument you have with yourself as like bitterness or like
because these people,
they deserve to be there. Like the thing is, they've put in the work and they deserve to be there.
Right.
It's very easy to confuse that kind of thinking with, oh, they were only hired because of X. No, it's because they have the fundamentals.
They have the fundamentals. They do.
But they also have this extra X factor, like you were saying, on top of it that makes them stand out. Like
and here's what the response will be to people that listen to this. They'll say, well, then figure it out for yourself. Figure it out and find that difference maker that puts you above and beyond. I just, it's...
Well, you don't want to come off as fake, right? Like, what?
Exactly.
There's only so many things that you can
People
introduce.
have told me that they enjoy my casting because I sound, what's the word I'm looking for? I sound real. I sound genuine, exactly. I sound, like I'm coming off like I'm actually enjoying the Dota game, or I'm actually, invested in these teams. And 99% of the time I am. I genuinely enjoy the Dota games. I genuinely enjoy the teams that I'm casting. I very rarely get to a point where I'm jaded and I don't care about the team. I haven't gotten to that point where I've cast enough Dota that I'm just like, all right, I'm done. That's it. I'm sick of this. There are days where I'm just like, oh, I got to get up early to cast. That sucks. But then when I get up and I cast, then I'm like, okay, that's awesome. It's great. Let's go. Let's have fun. But
how do you turn, like, that's just an absurdly complicated concept to convey to another person in a way that they will understand it in a way that like sparks an emotional attachment to someone. Mm-hmm. It's like, sure, that's the thing is I love that was my goal for a really long time, is to write stuff and seem genuine. But I think a lot of people either can't parse that because it's an intangible and it's going to be different to different people.
Well, it's harder for writing, I think. I think if you're when you vocalize something, I think a lot of people can tell when you're.
I don't mean to take this away from the vocal part thing and going to writing. It's just more of like how I can.
I understand you're putting it into the terms that you can.
I can explain about. But it's just like it's very difficult to kind of make that into a thing that is as clear as an accent. Like the thing is that people will take like a British or an Australian or an accent that is pleasing to their ears, and that will be a lot easier for them to say, oh, I like his voice because blank, and then I would rather have his voice there like for a longer period of time. Like I don't want to say it's easy mode. I don't want to say that. It's just like it's easier for people to parse, so that it's easier for people to click and realize in their brain, oh, okay, that's the reason that I like that.
I will say that for people with accents now that it's not been as easy for people with accents as recent. Like there are plenty of great casters out there that people just don't like for some reason that do have accents, and there are great casters which I don't understand. So it does kind of confuse me. So it's not like when you're a caster that if you
have an accent you're
it's all to win. It's not necessarily the case. It's just, again, it comes down to that subjective opinion. And maybe they do have to work on stuff, and maybe they do have things they need to fix, and maybe I just don't see it because I don't watch I don't watch everyone's casts all the time. But
it's just like a unique marker that people can instantly understand why it's special. Like if it's done well on top of the fundamentals, it's very easy to parse, as opposed to something else that is a little bit more subtle or requires a deeper knowledge that you cannot guarantee that the larger community has.
Yeah, this entire thing just sounds like me complaining. I hope it doesn't come off that way.
Yeah, don't worry, man. Like I think that's part of the podcast is like I think a lot of people you sound very similar to me in the sense that if we're vocalizing these kind of things, we're worried that we're coming off as
it's not that I'm whining, it's just that I have to vocalize this stuff, because if I keep it bottled up inside too long, then I'm just like, then it just gets to gnaw at me, and it's just like another thing for me to worry about. Definitely. So again, guys, when I'm talking about this, it's because I rely on this type of job for my livelihood. I've tried to anyway, and it's so far not been super successful in doing so. And you'd think that somebody here at this hub is doing okay for themselves, but it's just not how it actually is.
I remember LD's blog post around the time that the Dakota thing, the Cottle guy thing happened last year. And I recently reread it because I was talking to a caster. I was talking to Lyrical about it. He was like my second episode for this. And it was just like, it painted exactly what you were saying, only in just like a little bit more succinct terms. Obviously, it's like probably less than 1,000-word blog, but just like your fate and your livelihood and the money that you make and the ability for your further revenue potential is put into a series of intangibles that are very opaque, and you don't know that if you are investing your time into changing in a certain way, whether that is going to lead you in the right direction. It's because it's up to a very faceless and invisible process that like you can only really make guesses at, instead of knowing for sure that if you put time into this, things will improve.
It's definitely a hard industry. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. And if you think about getting into casting and you're thinking about doing Dota, let me tell you that you have a long road. There are plenty of casters that I know personally, maybe over 50, maybe not that many, maybe 20 to 40 casters that are out there that have worked a significant amount of time, and they just haven't been lucky enough to receive that success yet. And those casters might even be better in terms of those fundamentals than some of the people that I know. Not that I'm just making guesses, and I'm not stating a fact or what I believe to be a fact or an opinion. I'm just stating that those people out there do have good fundamentals, and maybe some people like those people than other people, but they just don't have the success because they haven't gotten that opportunity. And I'm so shocked that I even got the opportunity to go to Manila. I was like, I have no idea why they chose me out of anyone. Not that I was really upset about it, No,
I wouldn't be.
I do understand now why they chose me, because because of just of how I did at the main event and how things turned out, and there is a bit of optimistic confidence, like maybe cautiously optimistic confidence that I have going into TI. But I've been optimistic before. It hasn't worked out.
So you almost don't want to set yourself up for the greater disappointment.
And it's like, and then what do you tell your family? What do you tell your friends? What do you tell your
what do you tell your friends
fans
that are going?
Yeah, I mean that too. I mean, they know. I mean, it's and you try to console. As someone that went to Manila, you try to console the people that didn't go as much as possible. But at the same time, you're happy that you got the opportunity. And then for me, if I don't go to TI, it's just like, my parents understand what I do. My parents understand what I am going through, and they are proud of me, and they're very excited when I got to go to Manila. But then, you go to Manila, and then there's this 2-week period at TI where if you don't go, what are you doing? Because there's no tournaments that are running. You're not casting. You're not doing anything.
No one's competing with TI.
I mean, like you can't get any work done. You're not getting paid at that period of time. The money is so infrequent that if you're not, like, it's like you kind of have to be doing something all the time, which is why BTS is so successful, obviously, is because they always have something going on. But that's just a testament of their work, of their commitment, of how amazing of a company they are.
And then just their intuition to be able to pick up stuff like Smash.
Yeah, I mean they make the right decisions at the right time, and but the thing is just that you kind of just have to rely on that invite coming in, because it's not even like you're disappointing your family. You're kind of just disappointing yourself. You're like, you don't even know what you did wrong to not make it. When the biggest thing for me is, like, I got invited to TI4. TI5 rolls around. I'm feeling confident, and then boom, I don't get invited. It's just like, why?
Yeah,
what happened?
I just want a report card that just tells me, like, here, what do I need to improve on so I can make it better. And
they give you a response. They message you and they tell you, here's, we didn't have room, but that doesn't tell you exactly the reasoning as to why you, and the biggest thing was grow your fan base, grow your community fan base, become somebody that is
it's almost like
well-received.
It's almost like you want to have a big enough fan base that if you don't get invited, people will be angry and make Reddit threads about it, or Reddit threads.
But I'm just not at that point yet, and I'm just like, I'm looking at other people's Twitter followers, and I'm like looking at mine. I'm like, what am I doing wrong? Like, how are they so in this situation?
Well, that's the thing, is that for me, what I thought about and why I kind of distilled it down is, like, the people, like, the fact that they're on camera at the events is what's also boosting their stuff. So it's a self-fulfilling thing. It's like they get invited to things, they're visible on camera, so they get greater followings because they're in a prominent position, and then that's how that thing works. It's like if you're not invited to these events or infrequent, it's like you are not in the public's mind's eye. You do not have as many opportunities to be, like, say, on an odd shot on the front page of Reddit or something like that. And then that exposure is what implores people, or what encourages people to be like, oh, okay, that guy seems pretty cool, I'm going to follow him on Twitter. So it's like, it's not necessarily your fault in the sense that you are doing something wrong. It's more of just that it is a rich get richer situation, where in terms of, they are more visible, so they're naturally going to be getting more followers because they are exposed to a greater audience who is, to use a really, like, businessy term, they're being onboarded to that person. They have a way of discovering a new person that they may want to be a follower for. So it's like, you're not on camera as much, or you're not on, say, some crazy moment happens and you just happen to be the commentator that's on it. If someone is always going to be viewing that clip because it's a crazy play or whatever, your voice being attached to it means a lot.
It's also, I'm just not involved in content a lot. I feel like is another thing. I'm not Slack. I'm an inherently introverted kind of guy for the most part, which of course has changed over the course of the years that I've done this. I've become more extroverted because you kind of have to be.
You kind of have to, yeah.
But I'm not somebody that's immediately going to be like, okay, let me do this part of, like, I'm not going to jump up and be the guy that says, get me involved in this content. If people want me to be involved in content, then yeah, I'll do it. If people ask me, we had an idea. Dakota had an idea for what he wanted to do with a content piece. It didn't work out so far, at least at this hub, and I was totally down for it. It sounded like it would be something that was great, but otherwise, I'm not going to go out there and be like, listen, give me more content, just because I don't know what exactly, because I feel like then it's my responsibility to come over the content or something,
And especially if it's in an intangible stage where it's not necessarily a hit, or it's something that, like, I see this all the time with a lot of people, where I went through it myself, where they just, say you were to start content, quote unquote content, and on your, your YouTube site or YouTube or something else like that, and it doesn't necessarily hit a spark at the beginning. It's like you take the time that you were making that stuff, and once you don't receive a feedback for, or like the response that you think that it deserves, you get a kind of a negative feedback loop in your head where you're like, I could have used that time to cast another game or something like that, right? And then it kind of, like, again, becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. You either, like, I've made things that I've put like 30 hours into, and then when I publish it, it doesn't get the proportional response that I think it's entitled to because I put a ton of work into it. So because of that, you're like, why would I do that again? You know, or like, why would I do that again? So you kind of have to start from, you not only have to do all the things that you're doing right now, you know, you not only have to like go through all the hard stuff that you're going through right now, but you have to start a new project and add on another process of disappointment or hardship or learning right on top of the things you're doing now. And even worse, you either have to make new time for that out of the time that you already have. So it either means sleeping less or like doing less, less things that you enjoy. And it might take away time from your casting, which you at least know is a thing that will lead you somewhere. So it's just like it's this weird messed up thing where it's like you have to almost just like throw yourself into it, not in the sense that you're ignoring everything else, but I got some really good advice from a friend about this, and I've been trying to apply it more over the last month, where you are thinking less about the context of the work in terms of like what it represents, in terms of what it can bring you, or what will happen if it's really successful, or how it will make me richer, or if this blows up, what will it mean to me? You have to like almost shove that completely out of your brain and just
do the work,
and just literally focus on the work. It cannot be on the context of the work. It just has to be the work itself, because it's like that's how you build the consistency. Like it's less about to use a bad baseball analogy, you'd probably rather want a batter who can hit singles and doubles than hit a home run like every 10 pitches, you know? It's like, I think for a lot of people, they feel like they need to go up to the plate and hit that home run every time. And when they don't, they get disappointed or whatever. But it's, if you think about it, or if you look at all the people that are producing content who are like up in that upper echelon, of like being able to subsist on stream revenue or YouTubing or something like that, for their first year or for their first 6 months, or until they got that one thing that caught in the right way, they were still doing all this stuff that was getting like 10 views, 20 views, whatever. And then something happens where a spark lights, and then all of a sudden it might not be like an overnight, like, oh, okay, I'm good now. Like, you know, one video blows up. It's very rare that you will get to a point where, okay, all the subscribers or all the exposure that I got from that is enough to like propel me back up into the stratosphere. I never have to worry about, you know, those 10 viewer videos ever again. It's very rare that will actually happen, but it's very hard to mentally center yourself on that. It's very hard to like maintain that motivation when you're just like, okay, I'm just going to keep doing it and not think about the context of it. It's very difficult.
It's just, it's for me, it's just like, I'm totally okay doing the casts that get 1,000 to 2,000 or maybe even less views every so often, and subsist on that, because maybe I get a great game and then it gets a Reddit thread, but most of the time even if there is a great game,
that's just an intangible. You can't count on that, you know?
Exactly, that's the thing. Like, but you kind of have to, though. Like, as a caster, you kind of have to worry about those things. Maybe not when you're casting. When you're doing the work, you cast Dota. That's fine. That's what you're supposed to be doing. And usually when I'm done casting, I kind of just get up and I go walk around, or I do something else. Maybe I play a game, and so I don't think about it. The only times that I think about it are when events like this come around. It's really only when TI rolls around, because I didn't expect the Frankfurt or Shanghai major. You know, I didn't expect that. I didn't really expect them. I kind of sort of had a feeling about the Manila major, but it was a very small feeling. And so if I didn't get invited to that, then whatever. So when the Manila major comes around and I have a good cast, and then all of a sudden the TI comes around, and then all of a sudden the expectations that I didn't have beforehand are now there. Yeah. And it's just like, now I have to worry about this stuff again. But even with all of that said, and to get the whining out of the way, it's really good to be able to do what I do.
I was about to say, the key question is, whenever you have conversations like this, and whenever you have conversations with other people like this, you usually ask them one question, and it's would you rather be doing anything else?
No, of course not.
Exactly.
Of course, I would not want to do anything else. I could think of one thing that I would rather do than Dota, and that's pretty much the same thing as doing Dota, which is hockey commentary. It's like the only other thing I could maybe see myself seeing. But even then, I still wouldn't want to do hockey, because then if I'm in an arena, then your voice is not going out to the arena during
Yeah.
the hockey game.
Yeah,
It's a
it's
hockey
just-
game. It's quiet except for what's going on the ice and the crowd when they cheer, when the goal is scored. It's great. And during the live broadcast, during the feed, your voice is going through and it excites the people at home, but you're not amplifying what's already happening in the crowd, which sounds
Oh,
sort
yeah,
of
you're supplementing it.
It sounds sort of egotistical to say that, but it's not an ego thing. It's not like, oh my God, I'm totally hyping up the crowd. You don't believe that you're hyping up the crowd. You believe that that you're part of the crowd, and then your voice on top. It's just cool to have that kind of feeling. Just to when the black holes were being hit in that last game of that Fnatic LGD series, and you start getting hyped up, and you take your headset off and you listen to the crowd. It's just an unbelievable feeling that just shakes your core. And the fact that your voice is on top of that, and then somebody will message you and say that that was awesome. It was super cool.
And your voice made it better.
And your voice was better, and people tell you that, then it's all worth it. Everything. I might have complained for 45 minutes in this interview. I might have complained about the situations of casters, how it's tough to deal with being just a bland guy that casts and all this other shit. But what it comes down to it is that when I get on that stage to cast that best of 3 series, I'm having a good time, and I'm glad that everyone else is having a good time, and I'm glad that I'm there. I'm glad that I got to do that series, and
You just want to do more of it.
and I want to do more of it, because then I also get to meet people that come up to me and they say, I really like your casting. And then if you're really lucky, somebody will come up and say, your casting inspired me to do something else. And then you're thinking, I can't believe that I was able to do something with my life that was influential in someone else's life. Because for me especially, there's always been a couple of people that I've always looked up to and that have influenced me in my life. And that goes, and especially in music, like the one band that I credit to my life and where I am today as a person is the Chili Peppers and what they've accomplished, because it's a band made out of pure energy and excitement and it's just, they came together, they focused on what they wanted to do. Sure, there was a lot of shit that happened along the way. Sure, they had a couple of bad albums in the middle there. But when they had the 4 main members of that group,
Yeah.
I will
Magic
always,
happened.
and when and you get to see those members live at the primes of their career, it's just, it's a thing that changes your life. It makes you say, it changes you from listening to pop and the rap of the day to somebody that listens to all sorts of type of music, and it changes you to that person that
It opens your horizons.
it definitely does. And a lot of the songs that they sing ring true to my experiences in life, and obviously so they influenced me. And obviously they don't know who I am, and they don't give a shit. I'm sure they hear that all the time. They're like, oh, great. I'm glad that you were influenced by our music. And I'm sure they genuinely feel happy when people tell them that. But for me to have that, it almost feels like I'm a rock star. I'm not a rock star, but it almost feels like I am. Which is, again, it's not an ego thing. It's not like, I don't know. I've never really wanted to be a rock star. I just wanted to do something that was fun. Like, my entire life has been based around hedonism and just having a good time. It's just like whatever I could do to have fun, that's what I wanted to do. Hated school. I did very well in high school despite not really working very hard. In college, I fucked around and I sucked. I quit swimming because it wasn't enjoyable to me anymore in college, and I played a lot of video games when I was a kid and when I was in high school and when I was in college, and so I decided, okay, well, I just want to do what I want to do, something that allows me to have fun, and I just saw, like, one day I saw Purge make a video about how to get into casting, and I'm like, I can do that. Let's do it. Let's start doing it.
Sure.
And
Now you're here.
that's all it takes. And that's all it takes is that thought process. And it sucks when I hear, people just talk about how much they hate their shitty jobs. And especially my brother who is a big part of my life. He's 4 years older than I am, and he's got a PhD in chemistry. And every night he comes home frustrated because his job sucks, and he gets on Dota. And instead of playing Dota to have fun, he's more often than not yelling and raging at people, And it's just like,
life's too short.
Exactly, and it's just like
you gotta have a reason for doing it, man. It's like you can't discount your own reason. Like not wanting to hate your job is like it seems like a very selfish thing, or it seems like a very simplistic reason to like pursue something, but it's so valid.
Well, that's not. I mean, it's not like I wanted to cast because I hated my job. I was coaching swimming at the time, which of course it was self-satisfying in its own ways because you're teaching kids not just the values of swimming, but the values of life in general, because you're with these kids more often than you think, and
seeing them grow is gratifying.
Exactly. You go from ages 11 to 18 before they get to college, and you're like, okay, they're you've helped shape these people into hopefully better individuals, and to individuals that are chasing their dreams and things like that.
So it's kind of bringing it back to the kind of rock star thing. It's the same kind of thing.
Well, right, but it's more like it's less of a rock star as a swim coach, and more of a teacher / role model type. Maybe like a parental figure, perhaps even more so than anything else, or perhaps a big brother might be more apt, depending on the person that you're coaching, which is also gratifying, because you get to shape individuals' minds and things like that. And it's never been about fame for me. A lot of it does have to do with my family, my mom and I especially, have this inherent need to being liked. Like, we want to be liked by people. That's just kind of who we are. And so when that doesn't happen, it's frustrating. And you're wondering, well, then you picked the wrong job if you want to be liked.
Yeah.
That's probably the wrong thing, to do. But when you are, liked, and when you are given those moments where someone will come up to you at an event and they'll hug you and they'll say, hey, it's really good to meet you. I'm really glad because you're super influential to me, and then that's awesome. And they, it's just
it's those little peaks.
As much as I've complained throughout this entire interview, it's just been that as we progressed through the interview, and as I thought more and more, I'm like, I actually really am super lucky to do what it is that I do, and I'm super lucky to be here with all of these mega talented people. And but you see, the reason why I was upset, you understand where I was coming from.
100%.
It's just because I want to keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And maybe I am going to be secured even if I don't go to TI, but I don't know. Who freaking knows? Yeah. I don't know.
But like I said, in the meantime, it's it's a worry that comes from, the work that you've put in for already, and you don't want that to be for nothing. And that is a totally human way of approaching things, because once you've dedicated yourself and you've dedicated a piece of you as a human and years of your lifespan to something, it's you want to see that ride for as much as you can. And it's if someone came to you tomorrow and told you hey, next year you're not going to be a caster anymore, you're 100% you're going to go to that person and say, no, let me stay. If it came down to that, you'd be like, no, I'm not ready to leave. I want to stay. You want to fight for that.
I mean, I would definitely leave on my own terms for sure.
No, exactly. Sorry, I was thinking about just I think it was just that was a really bad analogy.
No, I understand, but if I was forced out of being a caster, if for example,
I was thinking of this Doctor Who episode where I think it was before one of the if you're familiar with the show, that
not
Doctor,
really, no.
Basically the qualities of the main character is that how they explain actor changes is that they have the Doctor regenerate into a new iteration of himself, and that's how they explain the actor changes. A new actor comes in, they explain it as he's allowed to interpret the character, or the writers are allowed to interpret the character in a very different way, and the actor just literally kind of follows along with that. And
sure.
It's treated as the same person, but it's a different iteration of them. So there's I think there's 13 of them so far, so they literally call them the 13th Doctor, the 12th Doctor, whatever.
Right.
But at the end of one of them, right before he's about to regenerate, and it's literally, this is a very well-liked iteration of the Doctor, very well-liked version of the actor was very well-liked, and his like kind of final words were like, "I'm not ready," like, "I don't want to go," and it's kind of that kind of similar thing. It's like you've been on this kind of journey so far, and it's like, you've put in so much of it that's almost like, you don't want to go unless you know that you've put in all you can into it.
It's like if I got a job in esports and they're like, well, you can cast, but your primary goal is to do X, Y, or Z, or an even better thought process. And
if you got a desk job, that's the thing.
Yeah, or if maybe even, and I doubt, and I'm not like trying to say Valve's evil or anything, but if Valve were to come up to me and be like, listen, you're banned from ever using the Dota client again, and you can't cast any games, we're gonna make sure that this never happens again. If I do something so ridiculously horrifying, which is pretty much impossible,
yes.
that I couldn't do that, then I can understand where you're coming from, and I can understand that. Like, I would definitely be like, no, that's not happening.
That's not happening.
I mean, the thought of leaving and the thought of stopping has crossed my mind more times than once. And oftentimes it's around this time period.
It's just the most stressful time of the year.
It really is. It's just, when, even if I don't have anything going on in like the months of December or November, then my family's harping on me to be able to make more money and stuff like that, and to stop being super lazy or whatever. And I'm just like, eventually something's going to happen. And then something does happen, and then maybe, but then maybe next year something doesn't happen. Then there's a situation where I don't get anything, and you have to worry about, where do I go from here? And maybe next year, I will.
Let's not think about that.
No, but I'm saying maybe next year, and it's not about leaving. It's
of course.
Maybe next year, like, I'll be cemented in a good position, and I'll get more and more events, and people will want to see more of me, and I'll be lucky enough to have that I'll call it pseudo job security, because there's really no job security in this industry, unfortunately. Maybe that'll happen, but until then, anybody that's in Dota will worry, and it's cool because you see these people that are here for the first time, or maybe the second or third time, that are here at this office or working with these people, or working at their first hub event, their first TI hub event, and they're like, oh my God, I'm on the Valve caster list. I can't believe it. I'm so excited. I can't believe I'm working with all these great people. And I'm like, I was there once. I remember that 4 years ago.
And it reminds you, though. It reinvigorates you.
It does kind of reinvigorate you to a certain extent, but you're kind of also doing your own thing. You're kind of also just like, let me focus on myself, and let me try to get back to that nirvana of being on stage and being at an event with people that are actually that like what I do and like who I am, and hopefully I can. It's just this is what I tell myself. I have this mantra, and I think that this is probably the best thing to end on is, when I cast, my main goal is to not necessarily. It's not about me, talking about Dota and throwing in all the knowledge that I can. It's not about It's not about how fast I can talk. It's not about how excited I can get. It's about how much I can entertain everyone, how much I can make them enjoy the game further, and how much I can make them feel better about this Dota game that they're watching, and how much I can share my passion with them. Even if I don't play as much Dota as I used to, I still love the game with everything in my heart, and it's a game that I'll continue to love probably until the day that I die, or until it's gone from the face of the planet. If I can share my enthusiasm and my passion with just one more person over the course of a cast, then I've done my job. And that's how I look at commentary, and that's how I look at what I do for a living, or what I try to do for a living. And hopefully you guys out there that are listening to this understand that that your happiness from watching Dota from my cast is important to me. So that's it.
Travis, it's been amazing talking to you. Where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at Maut Dota. Is probably the easiest place. If you'd like to shoot me an email, you can send it over to redditmaut@gmail.com. I have a Twitch channel that I stream on occasionally, but not very often. Here and there, I'll stream for a week and then maybe not for another month, which is over at twitch.tv/MautDota2. And I think that's about it if you want to find me on social media. So, yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much for joining us. It was really great.
Thank you.
We will be back next week with another episode of Sessions. This is obviously pre-recorded. I believe today is the 26th.
7th.
27th. So this will air, I believe, the 30th or whatever the Thursday is. Like I said, we will be back next week with another episode. If you're watching this live on Twitch, thank you so much for checking this out. If you're watching this on YouTube or iTunes, Stitcher, any of those things, thanks again for listening. If you want to support the podcast, you can, and go to patreon.com/MattDemers in order to kick monetarily per month, which also gets you a number of different benefits like show notes and episodes early. Thank you guys again for listening. We'll be back next time. And for now, see you later.